Hey Lopo, great to have you with us here at Eight Roads. For people who don't know you, you're the founder and CEO of Wahanda. Eight Roads is proud to have been an investor since 2011 until the exit in 2015. And so I like to brag that we were the lead investor, but more importantly, we were an investor. So great to have you with us.
Thank you. It's good to be with my lead investor again. So we started Wahanda in 2008, and it was founded here in London. And the idea behind the business was to create OpenTable for spas and salons. And I looked around and I said, why is it that you can book everything in your life online, but you can't book your hair and beauty, right? You can book flights, cars, hotels. You even organize your dating life online, but not hair and beauty. And at first I thought the hair and beauty market must be a really small market. But it's one of those markets that the more you look at it, the more you realize it's huge. So in Europe, I think the hair and beauty services market is about €100 billion market. We thought we could go down a track of kind of doing it on a media model, where we just kind of, people would pay to be on the site, and we would
listings,
listings, lead generation model, because that was kind of the hot thing at the time. And that didn't really work. We could never capture enough of the value of that process, and we also never got enough credit for the leads that we generated. So we decided to start building this booking model where people can book their hair and beauty services online. But it was a complicated thing to build. Well, we launched it, this must have been 2010, and we were the first to launch in the UK, and it just took over our business. And the business just, it rapidly became 70% of our business, or 80% of our business, and was this huge driver for growth for us. And in the background, we kept building this other booking system, but this daily deal business was kind of the main thing we were known for. It was the thing that consumed all of our time, etc. And that business kind of grew really quickly. And I think when you and I spoke, we had this daily deal business growing really rapidly, and we had this booking business that was kind of growing in the background. And the thesis we had, that you and I had, was that we were going to build the daily deal business up, and it would plateau at some point, and then we were going to build the booking business, which is kind of take over. You invested in kind of September, October of 2011. Yeah. And I remember, I think it was our February board meeting in 2012, we tried to scale up the business, and we were seeing some degradation in the economics of the daily deal business. And I kind of turned to the board, and I turned to you and I said, listen, I just don't think it's wise for us to take the investment and continue to spend it on daily deals. I think we should really double down on the
And I remember also the salespeople who had to go to the salons and said, okay, I'm selling you the daily deal, which is all about that kind of the one campaign per day, and then would show up again and say, well, now I want to be your booking engine. Yeah. There was just fundamental kind of conflict.
Exactly.
With the merchant themselves.
Exactly, and you couldn't kind of sell. You couldn't sell both, and if you wanted, and as soon as you'd made a decision to focus on the booking engine, then every time a salesperson got there, like, what did you want them to sell? Get a deal, or do you want them to get the relationship?
Commission based on?
And so and so I think what you and I didn't realize was that decision was going to actually kill the business. We thought it was kind of like, okay, that was just going to. We thought the daily deal business would kind of keep ticking along somehow, and in the months that follow, we realized actually what we'd done is killed the business, and so by September of that year, of 2012, so it's about 6-7 months later, the daily deal business basically been run down to nothing. And we had officially launched our appointment booking business. That's the business that you can book all your hair and beauty services real time. And that business was taking off. But it was an incredibly difficult year, because for a year, basically, we were flat to declining, right? We had one business declining, one business growing, and they were sort of offsetting each other, but not really. And that was an incredibly tough, for a venture model, that's a difficult transition to go through. So in the middle of that transition, right, in 2012, I also came to you and said, I think I found a company I want to buy, right? And it's a software company that produces software for spas and salons, and it's 4 people who are in Lithuania, and I'd never been to Lithuania. So we're a small business going through a potentially catastrophic transition, and I'm coming to you saying I actually want to buy a business in a country that none of us have been to, and you said okay. And actually that software acquisition and the team that came with it were actually at the very heart of that transformation towards the new platform, and really transformed the way we did technology, and they transformed the product, and it transformed our service to our providers. So that was incredibly important. But again, a good example of how I think 8 Roads can really think in the long term. And in the middle of all that, we also said, we want to give the software away for free. And you said, okay, that makes sense. So I think we were always very strategically aligned. In the last year with 8 Roads, we began what was the next chapter in Wahanda, which is that we really began the journey of developing the business outside of the UK. And our first step was Germany, and it was and that was off to a really promising start when Recruit did the acquisition of Wahanda. And we've really continued that journey.
And I think maybe part of it speaks to kind of where we are in the state of the European market. I feel like we are for the first time looking at creating many very, very large companies, and I think Wahanda has a chance of being not just a national but a global winner in a category that is not really a clone of anything. Yeah. So part of, I think, the pride that we take, I think both of us, is that, this isn't sort of a typical European story of someone, finding an interesting idea or a proven business in the US and then hustling to actually recreate it here. I think, part of it, the amazing potential for the business is actually, it is one of its kind.
Couldn't agree with you more. When we started Wahanda, the first thing everyone always looked at was, when I spoke to most VCs, were like, well, where's the US competitor? Where's the US equivalent? And when I explained to them there wasn't one, right, that we were it, and they kind of thought, well, something must be wrong, right? It must be something wrong with this business and idea and this model. Most investors in Europe, even though they state they want to create this global leaders, don't actually want to take the risk and say, okay, I'm going to take a risk, I'm going to build a company here, this will be the leader, this is the one who will innovate and be and break path, which I find amazing, right? So but you saw that early, and not only you see it, but you put your money where your mouth was on it. And I think the reason we chose 8 Roads was I think a couple things. First of all, I think because of that history, I think we really kind of understood what 8 Roads was about, and we got to know you specifically, and that was really helpful. Second thing is you really understood the business. Like you really kind of understood the market, you understood what we were trying to do. Not everyone did. I mean, actually, a lot of investors that we spoke to kind of just didn't really get what we were trying to do. But I don't know, maybe it was your feminine side that maybe you understood understand the hair and beauty market. But a lot of investors just didn't understand the hair and beauty market and why you'd want to build something in that space. And I always say to entrepreneurs that you'll never get an investor that cares as much about the business as you do. It's impossible. But you want a group of investors who care a hell of a lot. And I knew that this was something that you really, believed in and wanted to make a success. And I felt it. It wasn't just another part of the portfolio, and you weren't just kind of chasing another deal. And it was something you kind of were interested in. The thesis made sense for you, and that was important for me.
Predominantly, the business was still a daily deal business. Yeah. And I remember talking to some of the peers in our industry, and people would pretty much always say, "Well, it's a daily deal business." But certainly, my and our core belief was that, there was a vertical marketplace to be built in this segment, and if OpenTable can rule the restaurants booking, so can Wahanda, and in the hair and beauty. I think we were not just, convinced about the market. We were also convinced that you were the right person to build a great business.
Thank you. But I think maybe as you get to a later stage, I think it becomes more of a transaction. But in the early days, the only thing, in my opinion, the only thing an investor is investing in is a person. I this story. With our very first round, we had a big U.S. billionaire who invested, and the story on that was he sat down. He came to London one day, and he invested in my previous businesses, and we had dinner together. And he said, "What are you up to, Lopo?" And I said, "I'm working on a new idea." And he says, "Great, I'm in." Right? And I'm like, "I haven't told you what the idea is." He says, "Doesn't matter, I'm in." I said, "Well, how much are you in for?" And he goes, $1 million. I'm like, $1 million what? He's like, $1 million. I'm like, perfect. And I got up from table and left because I could only mess it up from there, right? And it's one thing's constant is there are going to be some challenges. And so you want a group of people around you that really trust you, that you trust and they trust you. I mean, I don't know of anybody who's built a business where it is a smooth journey. And so you're right. I mean, you can't build that trust if you're just kind of, it's a beauty parade and you've got a bunch of people who've never met before just bidding for a deal.
You had a very good team, supporting you. So
well, you gave me one of the best bits of advice, which was it was in 2012. You kind of took me aside and said, "Listen, Lopo, I think you're great, but you're like the whole company. Like there's no one else. Like where's the rest of the team?" And I kind of went home and thought about that and said, God, he's right. I mean, we got to build out a team. You can see the moment when we hit the inflection point and the business really took off. It was directly correlated to when we brought on better and better people into the business. So I think as an entrepreneur, I think your first responsibility is always to try to find and attract and retain and motivate the best people you can find, and that's an ongoing challenge. On the investor side, I think the number one thing you want to do is you want to find a bunch of investors who, as I said, who really care about your business and care about you. I think one of the things that makes Eight Roads different is the way I've seen you not just deal with Wahanda but other businesses is when you pick a business that you really want to back and a sector you're interested in and an entrepreneur you like, you're not doing it based on kind of the latest fad or the latest trend in investment, which I think often happens. Often you get a lot of VCs I think who just want to get a taste of whatever's hot at that moment, and it's kind of a momentum play. I don't feel like Eight Roads tends to look at things like that, and maybe it's because of the fidelity backing that there's a long-term view of how it looks at capital and how it looks at capital allocation and how it looks at in building businesses, and I think that actually seeps into the way Eight Roads thinks about its venture investments, and I feel like there's just a much longer-term view of it. So. And I think there's a support there that really is powerful. And I think that's for, again, as an entrepreneur, I think that's a quality that is incredibly important. And I think quite frankly, very often underrated.
It's definitely something that we have the ability, kind of a perspective we can take, that as long as there's great amount of value to be created, you can continue to sort of stay patient, and certainly it's part of the DNA. I would say almost the flip side would be, I would say even when the exit came about, I don't necessarily think that we were in the mindset that we had to get out. In Recruit, you found a partner that can take you to the next level of the journey, and so in some ways it felt right, to go through a transaction that we went through.
You only get to build a couple of these in your lifetime if you're lucky, and I think I'm incredibly happy to have had Eight Roads as a partner. And I hope I get to do it again.